Thank you all for joining us for week 2's live learning session on coaching and trust. I really admire everybody's continued, feedback and contributing to this manager challenge as we build out this enablement program for all of GitLab. If you haven't already, take some time to read through some of the issues in the comments. They're really, really amazing little learning nuggets. I'm learning a ton by reading all of them. So thank you so much for continuing to contribute and giving us your honest perspective on things. You'll also see in this live learning session, we've kind of iterated a little bit based off of the feedback we got last week. So thank you for the feedback. Really, really appreciate everything. All right, so let's get into coaching and trust, week 2 of the manager challenge. So we've all done the challenges leading up to this, and the way we're designing this is that each challenge kind of builds on each other and we come together during the live learning events. So we talked about evaluating our team on trust. We introduced the trust equation, and then coaching and coaching skills. And then today we're combining the two. Coaching is a really, really critical skill set as a people leader, as I'm sure you all know. So learning objectives, today we're going to talk about developing a coaching mindset by examining coaching best practices and principles. We're going to learn how to apply a coaching framework during future-focused discussions with team members. And we're going to gain greater self-awareness through coaching scenarios that you can apply in your role at GitLab. So I would love to kick things off a little bit differently today and start off with the breakout activity. I think the benefit of these types of sessions is really being able to hear from each other versus, hearing the sound of my voice for 30 minutes. But we don't really have a ton of forums to come together as people leaders. So this is an excellent opportunity. So we're going to do a quick 7-minute breakout activity. I would love it if we're going to have groups of 3. When you first get in your breakout group, introduce yourselves, who you are, what do you do. Second is when you hear the word coaching, what does it mean to you? This can mean your own definition or the definitions that you read leading up to this challenge. And then 3, share an example of when someone coached you to achieve a career aspiration. What did they say? How did they help you focus on the future? So think about that for a little bit. And then JC, if you could go ahead and do breakout groups of 3, that would be awesome. And I will see you all in 7 minutes to debrief.
Awesome. You should be prompted to accept going to your breakout room.
So hopefully everyone had a good breakout group to kick off the session. Does anybody want to volunteer about what was discussed, about what they think of when they hear the word coaching, or an example of when someone coached them to achieve a career aspiration?
I can
what did they say?
I can, for me, I felt like coaching could be viewed as either or, something positive or something that someone may deem as negative, but I really think it's about, how someone wants to change that direction. And so if it's something that is positive, automatically you feel encouraged and you feel, like wonderful. But if it's something that you may deem as negative, you start thinking, what can I do to turn this to a positive? For me, my experience was someone who got me into the diversity, inclusion, and belonging space years ago. And they were able to talk about how, in the HR space and what I was doing for diversity and this, Candace, what really do your skills show up that I think you should use this element is really, that I see this in you. And, then, doing feedback as we did as an example here on the 360, we did that at that particular time as well, just getting the feedback and really deciding, these are areas where I can take these skills and I can, continue to build on who I am in this specific area. And that's how I even got into diversity, inclusion, and belonging, by someone, coaching me in an area that I, felt like my skills could sit really well.
That's awesome. And did they help you define that goal? Did they help you define it yourself?
Yeah, so it was given to me to say, can you please develop a diversity, inclusion, and belonging program? I was sitting in the HR at the time. Again, this is, over 12 years ago, sitting in the HR at the time. And they said, can you develop a program that really supports diversity, inclusion, and belonging, diversity, inclusion. And it, not knowing what I really wanted to do, no blueprint involved in it. We talked through all the principles, having conversations with the board and things like that. And so moving forward, yes, that individual coached me, and here I sit today. So I would say that's what it was.
It's a great example. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else while we're still on the topic?
Hi, this is Rebecca. I was asked to share this by my teammates. So I've been working with a career coach for about a year now, and the biggest takeaway for me, which was really to give me language around the approach that I already took as a manager, but it's really clear, is that each one of us, we already have all that we need to be who we should be or can be and to succeed. It's more a matter of the coach helping that emerge from you and take shape. It's the coach cannot give you something from outside that you don't already have, but together you can work on uncovering, for example, your own gifts, your own tendencies, your own preferences, and really embrace those and embody those.
Awesome. I love that example, like finding the strength within and what you already possess. I might have to set up some time with you, Rebecca, just to learn more about your coaching experience over the last year. That sounds really interesting.
Sure, I'd love to. And also she's super open to, like, if we want to have something at GitLab, like a mini session or whatever. Yeah, there's lots of possibilities there. Sounds good.
That'd be great. Thanks. Anybody else?
I'll share for our team with Kike and Nadia, a number of good points that they shared and examples, but a couple that resonated was one, Nadia shared of being deliberate as a coach to kind of reserve the temptation to offer up a solution, right? Or to answer the problem. It's about the second point, which is facilitating questioning to get the person that you're coaching, the coachee, to draw their own conclusions and facilitate some self-discovery and empower them to make determination of what the answer is and what the next steps are, and really just your role to facilitate that, not to solve it.
Yeah, I love that. I love the empowerment and having the coachee, solve it themselves, not you as the people leader to solve it for them. Cool. All right. If no one else wants to share, we can move on. All right. Well, so we all talked about coaching in our breakout groups, and I think there's a lot of definitions out there around the word coaching and what it really means. I think, to simplify things, I think coaching is really about helping others help themselves. And like you all said during the breakout activities, it's helping our team members come up with their own solutions and their own goals, and you as a people leader helping them enable that. It's not about, really giving advice, instruction, or telling somebody what to do. It's about helping them focus on the future. I can think back to my career, and I remember some really distinct times where somebody ahead of me, a people leader, my manager, or a neutral manager, just gave me really advice that helped course correct me to the future on a goal that I defined myself. And on the coaching page, we've got a lot of really great skills that I'm sure you all read. And, as you go into career development conversations with your people, always think of an opportunity to switch to that coaching hat. And I love this analogy of like various hats, because as a people leader, you have to flex your leadership style based off of the situation that you're in. You might be in a meeting where you need to switch to the boss hat. You need to be directive and ask your team members to do something, to get something done in order to achieve a goal. We're all about results here at GitLab. Sometimes that boss hat is, as a people leader, you may switch to that in order to get the ball moving. I really love, this wearing the teacher hat as well. Myself as a relatively new team member here at GitLab, I'm still figuring this place out. I'm constantly asking people for advice, and they're switching to that teacher hat to teach me new skills. So you might be in a conversation, you're wearing the teacher hat. The mentor hat, I love the mentor hat because, we all come to GitLab with various experiences and lessons learned from previous careers. And that really helps shape kind of maybe some of our guidance and our advising based off of past experiences. And then lastly, you might be in a situation, it's a one-to-one, it's a career development conversation or somebody seeks you out for advice on how to handle a situation, you might switch to that coaching hat where you're asking lots of questions, you're listening deeply to help people reach their own solutions on their own. So I think like as a people leader, if you're in a situation, you're in a one-to-one, you're getting ready to have a career development conversation, think of times where you can switch between maybe that boss, teacher, and mentor hat to the coaching hat. Because I've been in situations where I've gone to a people leader, a manager, and said, hey, can you give me some professional development advice? And they might give it to me straight from a boss's perspective, telling me, directing me to do something versus helping me define the goal myself. So let's apply the GROW model to maybe a potential scenario here at GitLab that we may have faced ourselves as people leaders or team members. So Crystal has recently transitioned to a new role at GitLab. She has missed several important deadlines and is now feeling the pressure from management to perform better. She sets up time with her former manager, you all, for a coaching discussion. So let's apply the GROW model to helping her navigate the future from the perspective of the former manager. So the first thing you're going to do is the goal, right? You're going to identify the goal to help Crystal achieve success. You can do this by facilitating, some questions to help Crystal come up with the goal herself. What are you looking to achieve? How does this fit in the bigger picture of your career? And what do you want to get out of this meeting? So the earlier challenges, we focused a lot on trust, building trust. Crystal probably wouldn't come to you for advice on how to handle her performance if she hadn't have built that trust. So they're all kind of building on each other. Now, next is the reality. What's the current situation? You might know that there are some barriers in Crystal's path to helping her achieve that goal. Help her uncover that. What's the current situation? What resources do you have to help you? And what are the internal, external obstacles? In the current state we're in right now, there's a lot of external obstacles facing many of our team members. Being cognizant as the people leader of those external challenges. And then options, explore the options to move forward. Don't be afraid to use your imagination. Maybe if she's missing important deadlines, maybe she's getting really distracted with Slack and messages. So say, hey, why don't you close down Slack for a few hours every day so you can really focus on your job? Options like that. What options appeal to you most right now? Give her the opportunity to select the best option that appeals to her. And then way forward, agree on specific actions and time frame. This is really important because, as the people leader, you're in that corner of your team member and you are ultimately responsible for helping them achieve their goals. And you might be the only one in their sort of sphere of influence that has knowledge of their goal, of what they want to achieve. So continuing to remind them, how are you doing with achieving that goal? Where are you? What kind of support do you need? Do you need help from me? Just being proactive with helping them, resolve, that gap. So that is GROW model in practice. All right, so now to the fun parts. So last week we did, more kind of like role playing. I think today we're going to do a little bit more discussion-based scenarios, and we're going to talk, hopefully if we're able to do the same groups from earlier. You're going to meet in your breakout groups. You're going to explore one of the scenarios on the following slide. If you want to talk about more than one, feel free to. You're going to discuss as a group which hat you would choose to wear, boss, teacher, mentor, or coach, and why. It's probably the coaching hat because this is a coaching course. And then discuss as a group how you would handle this scenario as a manager. Answer some of these questions as a group and be prepared to come back and debrief. Now, 3 scenarios, I'll go over them really quickly. I know we can all read, but sometimes it's easier just to talk through them really quick. Scenario 1, a team member sends you a private direct message on Slack saying they need you to talk. You jump on a Zoom call and they tell you they didn't get promoted and are thinking of leaving GitLab. How can you coach a team member through this? Scenario 2, you may have experienced this yourselves. As a senior director, you hold conversations with lower level team members. Some of them mention that their manager, another of your direct reports, is very harsh through written communication and comes off as cold in virtual calls. This surprises you as your direct report, the manager, is a high performer and you've never heard this feedback before. Since you have a great relationship with them, you decide to bring this up at your next regular check-in. What can you say in the coaching conversation? And then 3, you leave a Zoom meeting where one of your team members or direct report just gave a presentation on an important topic. It didn't go well, and she asked for feedback and what could be done better. How can you coach them? Hopefully these are all scenarios that you've experienced in your own career, and we will apply what we've learned and talk about it as a group when we come back.
Awesome. I will open the rooms and you should be prompted to go to your room now.
So we don't have a ton more time left, but would anybody like to go ahead and share, maybe group 1?
Sure. For group 1 was myself and Beverly, and we went through the first scenario. The scenario being, if a team member calls you and says, hey, I didn't get promoted and would like to talk about it, and would eventually be leaving GitLab if and not when it happened. This actually hits close to me, primarily because in one of my previous jobs, this exact situation happened, where I had one of my team members who came to me and said, she's not happy the fact that she did not get promoted and is thinking about leaving GitLab. And this is something that has been always in one of our one-on-one conversations, where she has continuously want to talk about how to get promoted. And the reason of her asking to be promoted is she has been in that role for 4 years now and sees herself to be part of the next role. For this one, I've gone through many different communications during a one-on-one, but she was very upset about it. And the approach I took back then, and which kind of goes along with the GROW model, is what is your end goal? So we did a comparison between what is your intermediate level responsibilities, job responsibilities, and what would be your senior level, and had her do a evaluation where she currently stands. And her point of view was, I hit 50% of what I'm expected from the new role. The remaining 50% is something that I can pick it up when I'm in that role. And my strong belief is you kind of demonstrate that you can hit at least all the responsibilities in your next role. Just hit them, not accelerate in those roles, at least hit them. Then we can say you are quite there yet. So from a growth model point of view, defining the goal as to hitting these different things is what makes us believe that you are capable of being in that role. The second is reality check. And the reality check was she was only hitting 50% of what's expected of her. Even though this was kind of discussed in our one-on-ones, she still was not able to capture that. And the third one was options. And options is something, if you're going into a senior role, we believe that senior being the significantly higher role and not someone who's just started with their job, right? So you should be able to come with a plan for yourself to showcase how to hit those remaining 50%. Based on these one-on-ones, she has never really come up with a plan. As a coaching manager, do I define the plan? Probably not. You give them the directions and they define the plan for themselves. And then was the will, and that will was not there, where she would come up with a plan and work on it, which either didn't happen, and hence the reason she did not get that promotion. So this is what we took at that time, and well, she's still with the company, I'm not, but I'm happy that I'm here though. But that is the approach we took back then. But it didn't really to be a very productive conversation. Like, even though we applied that model, I don't think she was happy with it. And that's what I still struggle even today, how to make it, even though they understand it, how do we make them satisfied with the answers and the path we give them? And I don't think I have an answer for that yet.
No, that's a great example. And I think, like, you know, professional development opportunities, like talking to her about maybe our tuition reimbursement program, or like maybe expensing, you know, LinkedIn Learning and some of our other resources, a great step. But I also think too, like, there's this notion that, you know, promotion doesn't always mean you're not advancing, right? Like, so you could still do well in your job and not be promoted year after year. Like, I think sometimes people, they equate, you know, being promoted with doing well in their job. And that can be a tough pill to swallow. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. That's a great example.
Thank you.
All right, scenario for group 2.
Yeah, I can chat about what we talked about. In group 2, we talked about scenario 2. So we're going through in order. One of the things we talked about was when you apply the GROW model here, you want to be direct about that you got feedback from one of their direct reports. So the conversation might start, hey, I got some feedback about your communication from one of your direct reports in a skip level. And then go and you kind of almost skip over the G part of it of defining the goal, because the goal is for them to be an effective manager. And I think everyone agrees upon that. So you can dive right into the reality. And because it's written communication in one point, there's a really good investigation to understand exactly what happened, right? There's probably, it's either in Slack or in a GitLab issue or something. And so you can go look at exactly what was said. And that can help both you and the person you're coaching be on the same page. And then when you talk about options, I think we were discussing in that reality conversation, you might hear from the manager, could go anywhere. It could be about maybe they're having a specific conflict about a totally different issue with that same individual, or maybe they're new to GitLab and they're not used to that our written communication style being so heavy and so important. But maybe they're totally self-aware that, hey, you know, I've got this thing going on in life and it's probably affecting how I'm communicating with my team. But when you get to that reality, you can help them explore options for how to improve, with the general goal of being, how do I be an effective manager?
Yeah, I love that. I love that, Kenny. And thanks for applying the GROW model there. I think you know, at GitLab, you know, the way text is sometimes interpreted on the other side can come off as like very direct and sort of, you know, really tough to like say, okay, what's behind this message here? Because sometimes messages can be very, you know, forceful. I think, you know, applying also a level of empathy to kind of how we communicate via text is really important too. So thanks for sharing that. Group 3. Group three.
Kike, do you want to go or do you want me to cover?
Please go. I'm taking notes, so thank you.
So we also did scenario 2. So we bucked the trend of going in order of the scenarios.
It's okay.
Yeah. We talked a lot about, it has first seeing if the feedback has been provided directly. And I'm sorry, I got distracted, so I didn't hear all the points from the last group. I'm sorry. But we talked about, you know, first figuring out, like, what's the root cause? Is there some trust issue that perhaps need to be explored? But I think we all agreed that before you have the conversation with the manager in this instance, you'd want to seek to understand a little bit more of how those folks approach the manager about it, giving them some feedback. And then with the manager, just exploring some ways. And then Nadia and Kike did a nice job of bringing the GROW model back in, of talking about open-ended questions to explore options, and then asking the manager to say, well, what do you think is the most appropriate next step? But we all agreed too, is to set that conversation up. You got to make sure they don't think like you're attacking them, that this is an exploratory conversation where we're just trying to, you know, get it out in the open and see what opportunities there are to improve the trust and with the team. Sorry if that was repetitive.
No, that's great, David. And I think too, it's like in a situation like this, similar to kind of last week when we were talking about underperformance, it's really addressing it as soon as it comes up. Because if you let something like this fester and kind of evolve and continue to grow, you're going to have people on your team that are going to continue to feel like, you know, this manager is really communicating harshly and you're not aware. So I love that you brought up, you know, handling it as soon as it happens and talking to the people that are impacted. Cool. And do we have anybody for group 4?
Sure, I can vocalize. So we actually discussed 2 scenarios. We discussed scenarios 1 and 2, but I'll do them in reverse order since I could probably remember the second one best. So this was an interesting one, and a lot of the things we discussed would have been mentioned already, but there were a couple of things here. We wanted to, first of all, like, the goal is to make sure that everyone feels comfortable and that everyone on the team shares the same like level of trust with their manager. So that's the goal, but we try to establish the reality with the manager in question, how much does their perception differ from members of the team, first of all, so that we know which options are available to us. Like there's some interesting context in this scenario that some of the team members felt that way. Why? Is there a cultural thing perhaps? Like perhaps one person comes from a high context culture and others from a low context culture, and so communication can feel like rudely direct in some cases. That may be the case. Perhaps there's something between the senior director and the manager having something of a bias themselves. The language of lower level team members may be something that's shared, a perception that's shared between the two of them, that ICs are perhaps lower level, and that that they share some context between the two of them, and they have a perception or a bias towards members of the team. So I feel like actually I'm probably missing a few things. We had quite a good quality conversation about this. I'm probably missing a few things. In scenario one, it was kind of similar actually. You have somebody who is obviously very agitated. We thought there might be a period of venting at the start of the call, which is, like in this context, probably fine. And then once that's over, you have to get to a shared understanding between what they see and what you see as an impartial observer, and just ask open questions to kind of to test their worldview, if you like, of why was their perception of what they were not entitled to, but what they were expecting so different from what happened in the end, and how can you bridge the gap? What options do you have? Is leaving the company really appropriate as a response? Does that help them reach their goal of promotion? Maybe it will, but you should ask that question honestly and hope for an honest answer.
Yeah, no, I love that, John, and thank you for sharing. I think, two things that, I picked up on your conversation or your debrief was just, being very perceptive and applying like a level of empathy to both scenarios is really important. And then I think in scenario two, specifically around the cultural context, I think sometimes, different cultures can be more direct than others, and high context and low context. And I know for me coming to GitLab, that's been something that I've had to get used to interpreting on, text-based communication, how it's perceived and, interpreted. So thanks for sharing. Awesome. Well, I know we're a minute over. If anybody needs to drop, feel free to. If there's any questions as well, we can spend some time talking through those. These sessions just go by so fast. I don't even, it's crazy. Any questions just on the content this week and the overall challenges? Like, how do you think things are going? Is it too much work as well? Like any feedback or questions?
You all are doing a great job. Yourself and JC are doing a great job, and I'm really enjoying the content. So
awesome. Thanks, Candace, for that.
I agree. +1 what Candace said. And
thanks, David. I think around those lines, around just interpersonal effectiveness and emotional intelligence, I think those are kind of big priorities for the L&D team. Cool. Well, I will let everyone go, and thank you all for the time. See you all next week. Bye.
Thank you.